Raider Nation, good morning. It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders, reporting you're watching Overreaction Monday after the Raiders lost to the Houston Texans 23-21. Though I think we'd all agree it felt like a win, though it was a roller coaster of a game. My message to Raider Nation today, and my message to all Raider fans out there, don't be stupid. And the reason why my message today is don't be stupid is because I've been seeing a lot of stupid comments after the Raiders lost to the Texans. And before we get into everything that I'm going to do today, I do apologize. I'm still not feeling very well. I didn't want to go into the Chat Sports studios because, Christmas is literally on Thursday, and I didn't want to get anybody sick before the holidays, but I will do everything in my power to be at work tomorrow when I go live at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. So if you're not already subscribed, please make sure you hit that sub button, because even if I'm not feeling 110%, you already know we're going to get you guys a video here on the channel. So the reason why I'm telling everybody today, don't be stupid, because I've been seeing a lot of comments around maybe the Raiders should keep Pete Carroll. Maybe the Raiders shouldn't move on from Pete. Maybe this team is going in the right direction and we should consider keeping Pete Carroll and this coaching staff next season. I want to say this again. Don't be stupid, because right now, the first thing that we're going to talk about is whether or not the Raiders should keep Pete. And if you think that the Raiders should keep Pete, it's Overreaction Monday. This one's tuck rule, tuck that. I know that the Raiders played a better game. Quite frankly, I think it's probably the best Raiders game I've seen all season long since week 1 against New England. I think it was better than the game where they ended up beating the Tennessee Titans in week 6. Honestly, I think it's the last time that they looked good since probably that Bears game where they lost 25-24 on that blocked field goal, and Geno Smith threw 3 interceptions in that game. But I want to be very clear here. Don't be stupid, okay? So Pete Carroll, after the Texans game, said, in terms of him coming back to this team next season, I would love to. It's going to be challenging. I really love this place, and I like this team. I know Pete is a great dude. And, he's a 74-year-old man. He's still coaching in the NFL. And I will always wish the best for Pete Carroll. But we also got to sit back and go, is Pete Carroll the best for the Raiders now and in the future? And that answer is no. And then I saw an article this morning from Hondo Carpenter, and I get that there's going to be certain people that are going to push certain narratives, and there's going to be certain people that, they're trying to build relationships. And Hondo is not the only one, but I saw a lot of people talking this morning, talking late last night around the idea of giving Pete Carroll another season. And this is what Hondo said. It gave the Raiders reason to believe they are not far off from being a consistently competitive team. Before the Raiders can make a sound decision on Carroll, they should at least give him and Jeanty a competent offensive line, an offensive line coach, and a play caller. I agree with Hondo saying that the Raiders should give Jeanty a competent offensive line, an offensive line coach, and a play caller. But the reason why that's a stupid statement, and why I don't want people to be stupid, is because if you keep Pete Carroll, he's going to keep Brennan Carroll. You're not going to give yourself a competent offensive line. You're not going to give yourself a competent offensive line coach. And I don't know who the hell the play caller is going to be, because yes, I do think Greg Olsen has done a better job than what Chip Kelly and that offense looked like. But I'm not going to hang my hat here on having Greg Olsen. And here's the other thing, if you decide to keep Pete, what good offensive coordinator is going to want to come to this team? I don't think that you're going to get a lot of good choices, because some people will say, well, if Pete's gone, that new offensive coordinator, might get that promotion. But you could also say, if you're the offensive coordinator and you got to deal with Pete Carroll, you're putting your job at risk, because let's face it, it's been a hard team to watch this season. And I don't think I would hang my potential to be a head coach on the hat of Pete Carroll at 74, would be 75 years old next season. So before we start throwing out the ideas of, hey, this Raiders team hasn't quit, and they haven't quit. Before we start throwing out the idea that we should bring back Pete Carroll after losing 2 points to the Houston Texans, I'm just going to keep saying it. Don't be stupid. So my question here, and it's going to be the pinned comment on today's show: should the Raiders consider keeping Pete Carroll as the head coach? Type keep, type fire. My answer is going to be coming up here after this YouTube ad break. The reason why I'm going to sit up here and I'm going to say you still got to fire him is because you can't let one good game clear your judgment, right? Like, you can't let one good game by Pete Carroll, by the Raiders in the month of December make you forget about all of the terrible games. And I know the Raiders snapped their streak and they had over 75 rushing yards. It was one of the best games, if not the best game I've seen from Jeanty this entire season. But the Raiders entering that game had 6 straight games of allowing 4+ sacks and had less than 75 rushing yards. Like, that's never, ever happened before. Also, shout out to my guy Chuck. Since we've been away for the holidays, he's been in my hip pocket and Alex's hip pocket. But, like, I'm also happy that the Raiders team hasn't quit. You know why? Because you're getting paid millions of dollars to go do your job. Like, if we're going to sit up here and act like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, this Raiders team hasn't quit on Pete, good. Right? Like, hold yourself to a higher standard. If you're sitting there applauding a bunch of professional athletes for going out there and doing their job and playing at 110%, wake the hell up, man. You know, like, if why are we applauding guys for doing their job? You're getting paid millions upon millions. And we got a lot of dudes on one-year contracts. They're going to try to prove in the offseason that they deserve a new job. So, again, like, I don't want to hear the Raiders haven't quit on Pete. Good. They shouldn't quit on Pete. They shouldn't quit on themselves. They shouldn't quit on their team. And the moment that you see type of that shit happening, yeah, like, that's where you have the conversations of moving on from a coach. But it's like, we also didn't win that football game. You know, we're sitting here, and it's been such a tough year, and I know it's been such a tough year. But we're sitting here applauding a 2-point loss to, I hear you, the Texans are 10-5. We're going to talk about them here in a little bit. But, like, you can't look away from how awful this season is just because we played well week 16 on the road against Houston in a game, mind you, that we still lost. And I think if Geno doesn't throw that pick 6, how many times have we said that this season? If Geno doesn't throw that pick 6, I think the Raiders probably win this game. And that's scary, man. No doubt about it. Also, I've been seeing a lot of people go, well, Mitch, you know, if the Raiders end up beating the Giants, if the Raiders end up beating the Chiefs, you just saw them play well against Houston, you know, we're moving in the right direction. If beating a horrific Giants team, who again is 2-13, and beating a Chiefs team who's probably going to be, not probably, they're going to be on their third quarterback. Mahomes torn ACL, Gardner Minshew tore his ACL. If that is the line or pedigree that you hold your team to, again, hold yourself to a higher standard, because this staff has not only failed this season, they have failed all season and all off season long. So we just got to stop being so stupid. We got to stop reacting to one football game. And if you really want the Raiders to keep Pete Carroll, I'm not going to sit up here and really dog you, because I don't know how to convince you otherwise that he's not the right guy. But when I saw the amount of conversations late last night, and I saw the amount of conversations this morning around the idea of potentially keeping Pete Carroll, don't be stupid. Please, don't be stupid. Coming up next year, though, is why I think it's one of the biggest reasons why you still have to move on from Pete. And if there was one really good thing about that game yesterday, I think it was a full-on glass half full, glass half empty type of game. And you could see that the glass was not nearly as empty, I think, as what some really pessimistic Raiders fans, or maybe even somebody by the name of Antonio Pierce, would like to say. Before we get into one of the biggest reasons why I think Pete Carroll's still got to be fired at the end of the season, a quick word from our sponsor, GLD.
We got a new sponsor here, and let's be real. Buying men's jewelry used to be a nightmare. It was low-quality junk that snapped after a week, or it was insanely overpriced with ridiculous markups. That's why I rock with GLD. If you use code CHAT at GLD.com, you can get 50% off. GLD has it all. Chains, pennants, rings, earrings, fully iced out watches, so you can find the perfect gift for anyone on your list. They are quality pieces built to last that don't break the bank. Every piece comes with a lifetime warranty. It's literally built to last the rest of your life. Can't think of a better gift? Give this season than jewelry that will last a lifetime. It's always real gold in every piece. You can really feel and see the quality in person. Now, I wanted to be able to show you all the chain that I'm rocking and the pennant that I'm rocking. And again, I apologize, I'm sitting down. I don't typically sit down when I do this show. But this, to me, this one is a 20-inch, which is kind of the size that I like when I rock my chains, when I rock my pennants. Now, if you wanted to just get the chain, like when Alex and I go out, y'all might get mad. I don't wear the shield when Alex and I go out. I usually just rock the chain. But here on a Raiders game day, you want to rock your team, you're going to be able to do it, and 50% off is one hell of a deal. So GLD has an official collab with the NFL, and you can get every NFL team on a pennant this season. They also have official collabs with the NBA, WNBA, MLB, NCAA, MLS, and even DC Comics. Chains and pennants that let you rep what you love. Work hard, change the game. Right now, GLD is making holiday shopping easy. For a limited time only, new customers get an insane deal. Use code CHAT, that's C-H-A-T, to get 50% off at GLD.com. That's 50% off with code CHAT at GLD.com. After you purchase, they'll ask you how you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that me, Mitchell Renz, host of the Raiders Report and Chat Sports, sent you.
All right, y'all, let's get in here to the next reason of why it's time to move on from Pete Carroll. And again, if anybody sees this chain that I'm rocking, that link is going to be available to y'all down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. And a huge shout out yesterday to the MVPs, TJ Parkinson and my guy, Fat Bearded Dad. I'm going to be sending you one of these bad boys in the mail. So be on the lookout. Be on the lookout. The next reason why you got to consider moving on from Pete Carroll is because you could see we have some good young pieces. And, you know, if you're going to be somebody that only follows this team once in a while, but if you followed this team from start to finish, in my mind, start to finish is when Pete got hired in February to where we are right now, right? Like, there's probably only, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 Raider fans that are in that top 1% that have watched this show that have really probably truly have done that. And I know there's a lot of other Raider fans that watch this show, and if you don't, I'm not saying that that's the only way you're staying up to date, but my point is, you know, we've been clamoring for a lot of these young rookies to play, a lot of these younger players to get more playing time. Pete has decided to play his players over some of these younger guys. The reason why a lot of these younger players are starting to get opportunities now is because injuries have popped up, and because I think that the heat and the pressure that Pete has felt and this coaching staff has felt, where they're like, all right, well, this season's over, we might as well play the young guys. And it doesn't shock me at all that a lot of our younger players are outplaying and outshining a lot of the guys that, you know, Pete Carroll and this coaching staff were trying to tell us earlier in the year that those guys are better than the young guys, and we should play those older players over our young guys. And, you know, I laugh because, again, if you want to keep Pete Carroll, you haven't watched this season. And, yes, there have been some of these younger players that are starting to play better down the stretch. If you think it's because of the way that they were treated in the beginning of the season from Pete and this coaching staff, I'm just going to roll my eyes at you. But let's talk about from a simple fact of just on the offensive side of the football. And I keep saying it on Twitter, at Mitchell Renz 365. I keep saying it on Instagram. And I really believe that the Raiders are a lot closer, especially on offense, than people think. I know this is Overreaction Monday, but I'm going to say, is the Raiders' offense closer than people think? This is a believe it, baby. Look at yesterday's game. But then also, when you look at the individual players that we have, you know, they show up and they show out, and they're doing a good job. I'm not saying we're lighting the world on fire, but there is some good young pieces to be able to work with. I mean, the first guy you got to talk about is Jeanty. And, you know, I've been saying all season long how talented Jeanty is, and, you know, people are throwing around the bust word, and it's just because you haven't watched him, or you're just looking at the box score. But yesterday, you know, he finally got a chance to get a little bit of wiggle room, and I don't know what Houston's game plan was yesterday, but it was a bad one. But, I mean, Jeanty, 24 carries, 128 yards, a touchdown, had a long of 51. It's his first game since Chicago, week 4, that he had a rush attempt longer than 15 yards. You know what I mean? Like, he ran physical. He was a bowling ball. He was bouncing off guys. But guess what he also did? He also had a 60-yard reception for a touchdown. And I know how talented he is. And if you're able to put a good offensive line around him, like, that's how you're going to win football games. Like, you know, you got Jeanty. You got a good young guy in JPJ. And then, you know, think about Brock Bowers. 5 catches yesterday, 33 yards, a touchdown on 5 targets. I wish he could have gotten involved a little bit more, but Houston's done a good job this season against tight ends. They have a really talented secondary. They have a lot of really good pieces around. And Houston, if there's one thing that they tried to do, they really tried to take away Brock Bowers. But by trying to take away Bowers, I do think it kind of opened up that running game a little bit for Jeanty. But Tre Tucker, you know, 4 catches, 43 yards on 5 targets, had a few good first down catches. I just think about the pieces. And, you get a player that's just such quick, short, intermediate route guy like Tre. He can stretch the field. He's really tough to cover in those 5 to 10 yard gaps. A few of the end arounds they did with him, I love that because it switches up, what your defense is going to be looking at. Like if you're going to look at Jeanty and then bang, the ball's in Tre's hands. And he did. I believe he ended up getting, 2 carries for 11 yards. It's not a lot of yards, but if you're able to pick up that 5-yard carry, that 8-yard carry, it makes it a little bit easier to extend drives, and that's what the Raiders need to learn how to do. They need to learn how to extend drives. Bech, 2 catches, 43 yards on 3 targets, had a long of 37, but that long of 37, that was a really good play by Bech. Like, it was. It was a really, really good play by Bech. For him to be able to beat, it was Derek Stingley down the field, perfectly thrown ball by Geno Smith. That's something that you can work on. Michael Mayer didn't make as big of an impact in that game, 1 catch, 10 yards. I just simply think with the pieces that we have on offense, and if you add a better head coach, you add a better offensive coordinator, you add a better offensive line coach, you spend a lot of money in the offensive line and free agency. Again, you got $107 million to do it. If you don't spend money in the trenches this offseason, it's because you are deciding not to. But you spend good money on your offensive line. You go out and you get a better quarterback. You got to move on from Geno because even though Geno, I think, outplayed C.J. Stroud yesterday, it's that pick 6, and it's just the bad decision-making, and that's not the only bad decision. I've been saying for weeks that I believe Geno Smith cares more about his stats, and I think he cares more about his completion percentage. He cares more about, his quarterback rating. If you didn't see the play where he took a 9-yard loss running out of bounds instead of throwing it out of bounds, I know it's a small sample size and maybe his head was turned off there for a second, but it's happened all season long. And Geno, to me, has taken sacks instead of throwing incompletions. He's taken sacks instead of putting the ball, up in the air. And sometimes, you just got to be able to do that as a quarterback. Like, you can't afford to always take a sack. And yes, this is a game where Geno did not take a lot of sacks. I believe the Texans only had, off the top of my head, 2 or 3 sacks. They had 3 sacks, which actually is pretty damn good. It's probably one of the best offensive line games the Raiders have had all season long. But, Geno's not making the proper decision. So if you're able to draft a Fernando Mendoza, and you're going to need the number 1 overall pick to do it, but if you draft a Fernando Mendoza, you get a better head coach, better OC, better offensive line coach, invest in your offensive line. And I don't even think it's all that difficult to invest in the O-line. If you didn't see the video that I put out last week, hey, man, I'll put it for you down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. But I built a plan on how easy it would be to build this offensive line and how easy it would be to fix this Raiders offensive line. I don't even think it'd be all that difficult, and that's kind of one of the funny parts about it. But then, you got 2 great young tight ends in Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. You got 2 good receivers in Tre Tucker and Bech, and you got a hell of a running back in Ashton Jeanty. And then you still got other draft picks. You still can replace other players in free agency. You know what I mean? You have the right pieces. Look at what Jacoby Myers is doing in Jacksonville. And since the Jags have traded for Jacoby, they are rolling. Imagine if you were the Raiders and you would have extended Jacoby Myers. And I get it, he's getting up there in age. But if it would have been Jeanty, Tre Tucker, Bech, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, draft a quarterback, get a top 10 offensive line, which you can do if you want to this offseason, that's a recipe for success. And I know I'm talking a lot about the offense because I do think the offense is a lot closer than the defensive side of the football. The defense, though, they played well yesterday. And I got to watch the tape because I didn't feel like the defense played a Pete Carroll defense. I kind of think just from, again, watching the game like I did. And I was really, really sick yesterday. I tried to do my best to pay attention. But, you look at that game, and I felt like it was a Patrick Graham defense. I felt like PG was allowed to play the defense that he wanted to play because it just reminded me more of a PG style where Pete just sits in cover 3 over and over again, and I just didn't see that from yesterday. Again, I'll watch the tape. I'll see what if my initial reaction matches some of the tape that I saw. But to me, the offense is a lot closer than what people think. And then if you're looking at the draft, you can go out and draft 6 solid players. If you're the Raiders and you got 10 draft picks, if you wanted, you could trade up. You get a few extra of those pieces. You could also spend some of that money in the trenches, and then you're worrying about linebackers, corners, safeties in the draft. We're not that far away, but keeping Pete Carroll would be stupid. Please don't be stupid. Let's go to the final Overreaction Monday topic. here on the Raiders Report. And this is, I think, it's not really has anything to do with the Raiders. But again, I think it's what that game was yesterday. And the Texans were awful. This is believe it, baby. And the very first thing that I did when I got off of work yesterday, I talked to Chugs. And Chugs, has been doing a lot of Texans content. And I'm really excited for him to be able to do it. But he knows that team really well. And I asked him, I was like, so what'd you think of the game? And he literally told me, he's like, that's one of the worst games I've seen the Texans play all season long. He flat out told me, he's like, I thought that they just tried to show up and just go through the motions. And, they're already preparing for week 17, week 18. Because week 17, they go up against the Chargers. Week 18, they play the Colts. Now, the Texans are, I don't want to say a lock to make the playoffs, but they are basically a lock to make the playoffs. Sure, certain things can happen. I mean, if they lose their next two games and if Indy wins their next two games, I do wonder if it becomes a little bit more intriguing. And tonight, Indianapolis, they play the 49ers. If the Colts win tonight, it's going to be a much more interesting game for Houston. If they lose, I believe the Texans are in no matter what. So, I might have to double check that. But yes, the Raiders did play well yesterday. And again, I don't want to take that away from them. They did. They played well. And it was a fun game to watch because even though I want the number one overall pick, even though I am Team Tank for Fernando Mendoza or that young quarterback, it's still good to see Jeanty breaking long runs, having long catches. It's still good to see Jack Bech beating Derek Stingley 37 yards down the field. Still a good feeling seeing Tre Tucker scoop up a ball off the grass, 14 yards, picks up a first down. It's good to see, Brock Bowers getting one-on-one opportunities and winning and getting into the end zone. Tonka Hemingway, he made a few really good plays yesterday. Max flying all over the football field. It's good to see the Raiders players, still showing up because you do. You root for those guys. And, we all love those guys. But, at the same time, you want that number one overall pick. But I bring all this up because, it's been a lot of chatter of, the Raiders played this great game. The Raiders played this great game. And I do think the Raiders played their great game. For the Raiders, they played a great game. I think it's an A grade. If you were to tell me to grade that Raiders game based on how they played yesterday, I'd give it an A. And that's even with the Geno Smith interception. It's the Raiders' A game. I asked Chugs, what was the Texans game? He goes, I think it's the first time I've ever seen the Texans win a game where they played a D game. And so to me, it's Raiders A game, Texans D game, still lost by 2 points. And there was a few ticky-tacky calls against Darian Porter, which I'm not going to lie to you. If the Raiders were in that game, fighting for a playoff spot, and a few of those Darian Porter calls would have happened, I would have been losing my shit. And I don't blame Darian for probably losing his shit a little bit. But I know the Texans are a 10-5 football team. But that looked like a team that just thought, hey, if we show up, we're going to be able to get a win. And, fans are worried about these last two games. And I'm worried about these last two games as well. But let's not just sit up here and go, because the Raiders played so well against Houston, we're guaranteed to beat the Giants and the Chiefs. The Giants and the Chiefs do not look good right now. And based off of Week 16, you'd like to sit up here and say that the Raiders are the favorites. But you know what? They're not. The Giants have already opened up at 3.5-point favorites against the Raiders in Week 17 action. So I do think, though, we have to discuss how bad Houston was yesterday. And they were really bad. I mean, it's not only, the team. They had only 16 first downs, 270 yards of total offense. They did pretty well on third down, 4.4 yards per play. But to me, they really missed Woody Marks. They missed a running game, and they didn't have a running game, and that put a lot of pressure on C.J. Stroud. But, Stroud was awful for 3 quarters. He made the plays when he needed to in that fourth quarter when it mattered the most. But, yes, the Raiders still deserve credit. But I also think that the reason why the Raiders were in that game is because Houston was already looking forward to the Chargers, already looking forward to the Colts. And they sleptwalked through a game for 3 quarters and then figured out, all right, we're going to have to turn this thing on a little bit. And they were still able to come away with a win. I mean, the Texans fans were booing them. I don't know if you heard them, but they were booing them. And it doesn't happen too often because I actually think Texans fans are a little bit more patient than what people realize. But they were getting booed yesterday because of how bad they looked. And they did look really bad. So before we start saying, hey, let's keep Pete Carroll, hey, this team's going to win these last final 2 games, they might. I sure hope that they don't, but they might. I think we also just got to look at the fact that the Houston Texans yesterday did not look like a team that won 10 games. They looked like a team that tried to show up on an NFL field and just go through the motions and hope that they were going to be able to get a win against the Raiders. The NFL is a fickle league, and when you just expect to win, you can get bit in the ass. And Houston almost got bit in the ass yesterday against the Las Vegas Raiders. So before I get out of here, okay, my statement is this. Yes, the Raiders did play well. The Texans also played awful. And please, don't be stupid. You don't want to keep Pete Carroll. You don't want to keep this coaching staff. You have to move on, even if we were able to win these final 2 games against the Giants, and if we're able to win the final game against the Chiefs. Now, I'm a man that always likes a good deal, and if you make it this far in these videos, especially when I'm not feeling well, I'll make you guys a quick little deal here. If you want me to go live for Texans Chargers, it's this Saturday. And I don't know what it's going to do to my schedule. We're going to have to mix around, and you're going to see me a lot more doing some of these live shows for playoff games, college football playoff games. It's going to be, me doing a lot more live content, especially once the Raiders season is over. We'll still do Raiders videos every single day, but this time of the year, I like to go live, and I like to hang out with the nation, and I like to watch playoff games. I like to watch college football games. And I know the Texans and Chargers is not a playoff game, but as it stands right now, the Chargers are the 5 seed, the Texans are the 7 seed, and I believe with a win, the Texans lock in their playoff spot. And I'm not going to lie, I'd like to be able to celebrate with my guy Chugs. Now, he'll be live on Texans, I'd be live on the Raiders report, but we could still root against the Chargers. If that's something that you're interested in, and you made it this far in the video, give me a like. If this video gets 1,000 likes, that to me is enough of an indicator that this is something that you guys would want me to do, and it's an indicator that, all right, I'll tell my bosses that we're going to go live this Saturday for Texans Chargers. So if you made it this far, please, please, please drop us a like button. But before I get out of here, I am planning on going live later on today. I'll be here at my house with my dog Chuck, with my wife Alex. I do plan on going live for the Pete Carroll presser. I won't be live during the Pete presser. I will essentially go live after the Pete Carroll presser, or I guess I might be able to go live like while it's happening and listening in. We'll see what ends up going down. We'll see how I feel. But I do plan on getting you guys another video today, whether it's live or whether it's me just reacting to the Pete presser. We shall see. But please make sure you're subscribed. Make sure those notifications are turned on. And I'll see you guys here in a few hours on the Raiders Report. If you're looking for even more content from me and the guys here at Chat Sports, make sure you click the subscribe button right here. We're always going to do our best to keep you guys up to date, even if we're not feeling 110%. If you want even more videos, YouTube's going to recommend this one. YouTube's also going to recommend this one over here. Essentially, if you like this video, they're going to tell you that you should check out one of these 2 over here. Tough game yesterday, but again, we're moving in the right direction, one step closer to the #1 overall pick.